Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Mowing After Dark here on the College Football Mafia Network. I am your host and your friend, Moen, joined, of course, by my co host and everybody's friend, Rock and Rant. How are you doing tonight, Rock?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. It's 35 days till I can call in sick for this show, Moen, because I will definitely not be here on August 31st.
Okay, fantastic.
That we would be kicking off against Miami and Notre Dame, and
Yes,
I'm a degenerate, but I'm not that much of a degenerate.
there you go. I will accept that call out because you might as well just schedule it. You don't need to call out. I appreciate the advance notice. Some people don't give you advance notice. So, we're going to talk tonight a little bit about the Big Ten's next move in realignment. Um, going to have some options. I've talked to some people this weekend, some real sickos like me. We're going to talk a little bit about what those options that they came up with, I came up with, what seems to be floating out there in the ether, and then we're going to let you guys vote on it. Each one has its benefits, its pros, and its cons. So we're going to talk that out. But before we do that, let's say hello to some people. Ryan Willie was in the house. He says first. And then he left us a $10 super chat. Thank you so much for doing that, Ryan. As a reminder, if you guys want to leave us a super chat, become a member, or gift a membership, you can do that all by clicking the little cash icon below the window, the chat window. For the big haters like MBM, BYU football, and Jeff Fuller, boy, Jeff Fuller does not like the Big Ten. If you think the Big 12 will get an at large bid on a regular basis, you're dressing. ESPN's cash cow is the SEC, and ESPN will keep milking it. You actually brought this up. We were just talking before the show. ESPN's a partner with ACC, but don't see a lot of stuff coming out of ACC media days last week. It was mostly ESPN reporting on Big Ten media days.
For sure. And there was one, since I did pay attention to both of the media days and was going back and forth between DVR versions and the cloud of both media days. It was funny. Jim Phillips was actually asked a question about being treated like a second class citizen by the ESPN. And he had the most, paraphrasing, but he had the most Jim Phillips answer ever. That whenever we go to them about our concerns, they always try to fix them. Basically, showing the most passive reactionary approach towards fixing that. Now, granted, you're not going to make the ACC become the SEC in the current world, right? That's just not a reality.
Sure.
But there was no even hint of, yeah, and like we've been really proactive, and this is what's going to happen to balance this out a little bit more. They're adding this, they're doing that. No, it was like, hey, when we cry, they'll give us a tissue, and then they'll do it again, and I'll come cry, and they'll give me another tissue. But like ultimately, I'm going to keep crying.
Yeah, ESPN's cash cow is definitely the SEC, and it's pretty bad when they're reporting more on the Big Ten, who they don't even have a partnership with, over the ACC, who they do have a
Yeah.
partnership with. So
And there were
I
some
don't.
interesting comments from coaches. It wasn't completely dry like the SEC meetings were. It's just that no good reporters, other than the people cover the ACC only, were there.
Right, and the only people that were really interested, I think, were ACC people. I think you're right. There's no conflict. In the Big Ten and the SEC media days, there was conflict, and I think conflict always brings people to discuss. You had the Big Ten versus the other conference, the SEC, nine conference. There was conflict. There was no conflict in the ACC this year. They made the settlement. Everybody's kind of nestled into their revenue sharing deal, and all was calm.
Well, the ACC is now the cleanest conference, right? Because every team knows exactly what they can do to get out. The only thing we really don't know about the ACC is when ESPN opted in to stay, whether they did any contingencies that we don't all know about, that should the ACC lose their top 3 or 4 brands, that revenue source keeps going, and they're fine even if the composition changes dramatically, not just losing 3 schools. But other than that, everyone knows the game. You want to leave here, you can go X, right? Everyone, Jim Phillips reiterated his stance of being more towards the 5'11", but he's okay if it's 5'7", and he wants it on the field, and like I'm sure we'll figure it out, and I'm not going to speak out loud because like I just want to work it out. And he's the only one who mentioned specifically for the not just the good of the ACC, but for the good of college football, which is super altruistic and is exactly why the ACC is in the position that they're in.
Yeah, it's I hate the term, but I got to use it. He's a cuck. He
He actually, if you hit Webster's dictionary up, you'll see the
yes.
drawing.
Yes. His wife could cheat on him in front of him, and he would forgive her and take her back and probably apologize. Thank you for the $10 super chat, Ryan. I'll give you Ute's least favorite sounder now, the evil badger. Thank you for the super chat again, Ryan Willie. It is appreciated. The Big Lubbock chiming in to say first with 2 exclamation marks. Ryan Willie, sorry TBL, but I was here first. The Big Lubbock exists somewhere outside of time and space, Ryan. No matter when they get here, they're always first. They're in the 5th dimension. Timothy Green. Hey folks, hit that like button, share, subscribe, and comment. Thank you very much. Absolutely. We're going to do a poll at the end of comparing all these things, but I do want, if you're watching on demand, go ahead and drop that in the comment section, which option you want to, because I think I'd like to total those votes up manually. Art Gross says the hubris of the Big 12 will hurt the conference. They won't take a guarantee of 2 teams because they don't want to admit they're not as good. Did they forget last season? Listen, I'm going to say this right now, Argraw. If not for some calls and missed calls, Texas probably loses to Arizona State last year. Arizona State's probably on the Final Four and not Texas.
Yeah, and there's a hill behind me that I will die on. I am not in favor of the AQs. The closest one I'm in favor of is actually Greg's model, which is like the splitting the baby difference. I don't agree with everyone who assumes that the present is the future. I believe that you diminish your conference possibilities to recruit long term, and that the other thing that could happen is in 4 or 5 years you don't even get one automatic qualifier. Right? It could go the other way too. You never know.
That's true. We don't know. We'll stick at 12 until they figure it out, though.
Probably doesn't seem like it's going anywhere else.
Yeah, it's not going to go anywhere. Nobody's going to budge. Daniel Gygax says, Moan, why do you have a Cleveland Browns helmet in the title card? We know the Browns are not big material. I don't think Maction would want the Browns. Listen, poor Brown. I'd feel sorry for him if it wasn't so funny. I'd feel sorry for him if they didn't totally deserve it. Yeah, so there you go. But that's not a Cleveland Browns helmet. That's clearly white, purple stripe. And the guy is wearing a Clemson paw on his jersey. That title card is based off of one of the options we're going to have coming up here. So, but it's not the Browns, I assure you. Friends call me Sean. Most assume that after the SEC Big 10 expand, that the Big 12 will take ACC schools, but they may have to wait. ACC schools will have to pay the $75 million. The ones who stay will get the exit fee money and will become the new unequal revenue winners. Couple things here. They may not have to pay that $75 million. If the Big 12 gets private equity, the private equity company may pay that for them. The other thing you got to take into account is stability. Yeah, you could be kings of the ACC, but is the ACC going to be a conference worth being a king of?
Right, and we also still don't know, again, whether any changes were made to the ESPN ACC contract that keeps their revenue whole should they lose not just 3 members that they've already replaced with adding Stanford, Cal, and SMU a year ago or 2 years ago, which was part of the point. But if they lose more than that, and it's all the top brands and ESPN's ratings view of what brands are, does the money stay the same? If it stays the same, then it's less likely because, yes, they would get that exit fee, and they could get the revenue from performance bonuses as well. It might make the math a little bit different for teams 6 and 7 and 8 who might have a home somewhere else.
But the Big 12 teams will get the schools that they want. They may just have to be patient. I think it'll be quicker than you think. I don't think they'll have to be patient. Shonsky's in the house. He says, hi, gentlemen. Good to see you, Shonsky. Caden the Diesel Freak. Let's effing go CFB Mafia. Thank you, Caden. Good to see you here. Daniel Gorby's here. He says, hello,
What's up,
Mafia.
Daniel?
Daniel, there's going to be some stuff you like up ahead. Bob Swanger says, hey, everyone. Good to see you, Bob. Nittany Lion. Two Masto with the crown and the whiskey glass. Whiskey makes it better, people. So,
Mo, and I know you said there's going to be some good stuff up ahead for FSU fans. I think all FSU fans should type in all caps in the chat tonight in honor of Mike Norvell's Media Days appearance.
hey, listen, the guy's passionate. I'm not gonna bust chops for being passionate.
Hurt my ears, man. Loud. Had to lower the volume.
Caden the Diesel Freak is apparently a Buckeye. Good to see you, Caden. Definitely love having my fellow Buckeyes here. Let's see. Go Black 45 series says JC split screen between CFB Mafia and Greg's show. You know, you can watch us for the first hour and 15 minutes because Greg's not going to say anything important in that time. He's going to do a
Greg
long
will still
monologue.
be getting through his preview.
Yeah, he's going to do a roll in. He's going to do a preview. You don't need to worry about that. We're going to be in here hour 15, hour 20 minutes, and we're gone. By the time that's all done, then you can go watch Greg. Then he'll release some information. Like Hulk and Bubba the Love Sponge. I don't know. Hulk kind of got paid 70 some million for it, and I don't even think Bubba the Love Sponge is on the radio anymore.
I mean, I know who Bubba the Love Sponge is, but I have no concept of any drama around him or ever heard him.
Yeah, it's when I had Sirius XM, I used to sometimes catch him in the afternoon, but it's definitely acquired taste. If your team is winning, it will get viewership. Doesn't matter who it is. I agree with that.
You sure you want to call SMU and ask?
Pit Snipe Husker says, good afternoon, all. Good to see you, Pit Snipe. Dave's here is here. No, they would also be saying they will never be as good. Shonsky says, I've been hearing a lot about staying at 12, and I like that there's no need to expand bigger after 1 year. Let's see how this model works for a while. I agree. Again, I don't think the SEC wants to budge. I don't think the Big Ten wants to budge. So we're going to stick at 12 for a while here. If we do expand, as I mentioned on Friday night show, I would like to see some kind of look in every couple years to figure out, tweak it if necessary. Tempest is here.
You would revise the districts and the scoring once you take a look at what's going on.
Well, every 2 to 3 years, take a look at it. I mean, if the ACC is overperforming, then maybe they deserve another automatic qualifier. If the Big 12 is overperforming, maybe they deserve another automatic qualifier. Yeah, Big Ten's underperforming. Take one away.
I think that's a better thing than not ever looking in. But it's like the NIL settlement. You're taking care of the past and adjusting the future based off of past wrongs, which isn't necessarily what the future is, right? It's not going to help. If you adjust it, it's not necessarily going to help the team the next year if they don't, because right after you adjust it, it could be that a new conference is stronger, but it is still better than staying static for sure.
Yeah. CFB Rivalries is here. He says, what's up, guys? Been a minute. Love the expansion talk. We're going to talk about it. Don't worry. I just want to make sure I get through and say hello to everybody who's here. Miami Flo's in the house. Hope you boys are having a great weekend. Hit the like button. Thank you, Miami Flo. Of course, you can catch Miami Flo on his own channel, Miami Flo, as well as CFB Express here on YouTube. As soon as I remove this comment, it'll show up underneath Rock's name. Except I have to hit Rob Ellen. Says, good evening, go Tigers, and ready for the season. And there's the @CFB Express tag for his name. By the way, Grok thinks you're the least famous person, Rock and Rant, just so you know.
On the least famous person?
Yes. @CFB Express is the least famous person. But that's only after I questioned Grok 3 times. So Grok has no backbone. Grok is just like, okay, you're right. It's this person then. And then it's this one. All right, guys, we're going to talk a little bit about what's going to happen with the Big Ten's next expansion move. I talked to some people this weekend, ACC people, Big Ten people, SEC people, Big 12 people, G5 people. Came up with the 5 most likely, most probable, most, I think, agreeable versions of conference expansion. Came up with 5 versions. We've named them all. We're going to bring up one at a time. We're going to talk about these expansion ideas. And then at the end, we're going to let you guys vote on them to see which one you prefer, which one you like the most. I got a good idea who's going to win, but we're going to put them all up one at a time. Doc Gibbs is in the house and gives us a $10 super chat, but he didn't seem to leave a message, Doc. If you want to leave a message, Doc, by all means, go ahead and drop a message in there, and I will pull that up for you, and we'll read that. But and otherwise, let me give you a sounder. Let's see. Let's click on movies.
Hey, man. Am I driving okay?
I think we're parked, man.
Thank you so much, Doc Gibbs, for the super chat. It is much appreciated, sir. As always, if anybody is feeling generous, you can click on the little cash icon, leave us a super chat, leave us a super sticker, become a member, gift them membership. I believe Yude is working on a new members only video too, by the way. So definitely something to check out. All right, we're going to start off here. Let's kick it off. Let's get started with option 1. Option 1 here. The $1 billion quartet. Notre Dame, University of Miami, Florida State, Clemson. And you'll notice he's got a paw on his shirt. That's a purple stripe. That is Clemson. Most valuable brands, bar none. $1 billion quartet, a play on the $1 million quartet that was Elvis Presley, Carl Perkins, Johnny Cash, and Jerry Lee Lewis. We've got the $1 billion quartet, because when you look at the valuations for each of these schools, it totals well over $1 billion, based on the New York Times valuation that they recently released. Would the Big Ten go out there and grab
$2 billion?
It's well over $2 billion. But we're just going to call them the $1 billion quartet because the $2 billion quartet doesn't, doesn't sound right.
It doesn't ring as good. You're correct.
So Notre Dame, the white whale of realignment, University of Miami, obviously Rock and Rant alumni, Florida State University in Tallahassee, and Clemson University in Clemson, South Carolina. 2 AAU schools, 2 non-AAU schools. But this brings the most value to the conference. This would up everybody's payday.
It absolutely would. Look, this is both the pro. If you believe that it's all about football, then this is the most football decision the Big Ten could make, right? If it was all about football, they would do this in an hour, assuming that FSU and Clemson had the desire to go to the Big Ten. I know for a fact that Miami is all about the Big Ten. I don't think anybody in Miami really thinks that SEC is a likely place for a lot of historical and other reasons. And Notre Dame, if they get forced to go somewhere, it would be shocking if they didn't go to the Big Ten over an option like the SEC. So the question is, will they do this? And to me, it's like really, it's kind of like 2.5 AAU, right? Because Florida State's pretty close to getting it, right? Like if they wanted it, they would have enough votes to probably get it, though maybe some of the ACC schools wouldn't be so happy to do it at this moment. But they still would probably be able to get over the line. And Clemson is aspirational and isn't really that far different from what Oregon is with AAU and Nebraska not being AAU.
Yes. And very good academics at Clemson. They need to get the research done. They actually do a little more research spending than Oregon, I believe, which is saying something because Oregon's AAU. But the big question in this would be Notre Dame. Would Notre Dame come along in that scenario? The Big Ten's taking the 3 most valuable brands from the ACC, Florida State, Miami, Clemson, Under those conditions, the Big Ten is sitting at 21. Does Notre Dame, do the Fighting Irish come in at number 22?
How does Notre Dame stick away from, if these three brands left, like how would they stick away and survive really on football despite them being Notre Dame? It's just hard to imagine.
Yeah, it's tough to imagine, but maybe they could stay in the ACC with Stanford and Cal in this scenario and put everything on academics and continue to try and maintain football independence. But they just signed a deal with Clemson. The reason they signed the deal with Clemson is USC joining the Big Ten and USC possibly doing away with the Notre Dame game in order to soften up their schedule and be more prepared for a heavy conference run. Would Clemson be willing to do the same? That could weigh heavily on Notre Dame if Clemson says, I'm joining the Big Ten and I'm going to do exactly what USC did to you. There wouldn't really be a lot of teams out there that Notre Dame could schedule that would be a marquee game.
Well, if you look at Notre Dame's schedule, and I just did because we did a preview of the Miami Notre Dame game this last week. If you were to say substitute USC for Clemson, if either of them could keep doing it, right? This season you have Miami to open up, and they have Texas A&M, and they have Boise. The rest of the schedule is really rough. It's not going to get you a big strength of schedule on average. Look, any program can change down the road, but with their mix of their traditional rivals as well as the ACC games and taking the bigger brands out, it's a challenging schedule in terms of strength of schedule if you didn't have the ability to get a Miami and Texas A&M on it this year. Like that will be the thing that propels them if they win one or both of those games, because the rest of their season outside of Boise State is like not a terrible schedule, but it's not a very hard-hitting one. And I'm sure Clemson would, to go to the Big Ten, if they had to forego the newly signed scheduling agreement with Notre Dame, I'm sure that wouldn't really be much of a question.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a situation. Coy's asking would all four come in at half or full shares. With this makeup, they would be full shares. Oregon and Washington would immediately become full shares. And it would increase the money in the Big Ten for every school in the Big Ten, all 22. The money's just there. The question isn't the valuation here. Look, these are the four best brands available. The question is whether or not you can get some of these brands through to the Big Ten presidents. I think if Notre Dame's involved in this, if Notre Dame says yes, way easier to get Florida State and Clemson in.
Right, for sure.
If Notre Dame's out, it might be more of a slog to get Florida State and Clemson in. Miami will grease the skids a little bit. They're AAU. Clemson and Florida State are close, but they're not quite AAU yet. I think you need Notre Dame to get Florida State and Clemson in. There's going to be some options we're going to talk about coming up that don't require you to get Florida State and Clemson in. But I think you do need Notre Dame on here to actually complete the $1 billion quartet.
That seems logical. Makes sense.
All right, let's move on to option number 2 here. This is what has been the chalk recently. The Brains and Brawn Conference editions, Georgia Tech and the University of Miami. Getting into the pros, you get 2 huge markets. You get the Atlanta market, you get the Miami market. Lots of alumni for the Big Ten in Florida and the state of Georgia. You're not necessarily taking Georgia Tech for its program. You're taking it for its location. This is a good blend, too, because I think, you got 2 AAU institutions. Big Ten presidents would like that. Tech's, really got quite a Big Ten looking resume if you just look at the Big Ten schools. It would compare to a Big Ten school. Miami's more recently AAU. They do have, not having a stadium on campus. People are going to use that as a strike against them. But they do have a very large healthcare system in South Florida. And the Big Ten loves healthcare systems. You're obviously a Miami fan. This would put the Big Ten to 20. at least for the time being. What do you think of this option, the brains and the brawn conference?
Yeah, look, it makes sense from if you're not going to go for the other one, or maybe even if Notre Dame for whatever reason has 4D chess their schedule in every one of these scenarios, so they still don't need to do it. You're getting Tech, who almost everyone for this season has Tech in the top 4 teams in the ACC on the field, right? Not just the market size or the AAU status, the research, the engineering background that the school has. So you got Brent Keys really has that program on the rise with some really solid people getting re-upped on the coordinator side. So it makes a whole lot of sense because again, last year their TV ratings were definitely spiked by having that the opening week game with Florida State as well as the closing 7 overtime game against Georgia. But they're still in a big market. They still draw. They're still when they're winning they can draw, and when they have those big games they clearly are benefiting from that. And again, every market, every million in audience is not the same value because it depends upon the makeup of whoever that million is in a specific demo for the advertisers that you have.
Yeah, and some of this too is you've got to appeal to everybody in the Big Ten. So Miami may not be appealing to everybody in the Big Ten. For example, Michigan and Wisconsin, Washington, they may not find much appeal in Miami, but they may find that appeal in Georgia Tech, which would allow Miami to enter. Likewise, Ohio State and Penn State, they want bigger brands in their conference. They want bigger media markets in their conference. They want Miami. They both want Miami. Do they say, okay, we'll take Georgia Tech as a travel partner? That gets Michigan, Washington, Wisconsin, some of the more academic superpower brands on board by adding Georgia Tech in order to get Miami.
Yeah, Wisconsin, there are other relationships there in the past between Miami and Wisconsin, and again, glass houses, probation, show cause, get over it. It's not about 1 year. It's not about one player. It's not about one moment. I'm not sure what the Michigan or Washington issues are, but whatever.
Just Michigan, Washington, Wisconsin, or your Michigan and Wisconsin were the two that pushed heavy to get Washington in because big academic school, big research. Likewise for Georgia Tech, not quite as big a school as Washington, Wisconsin, or Michigan, but still lots of research. Obviously very high academic standards at Georgia Tech. So, you appease Washington or Michigan, Wisconsin, you appease Ohio State, Penn State, you basically appease the 4 biggest schools in the conference. Again, and I'll say this again, I've said it many times, the poaching thing between Wisconsin and Miami is a fart in the wind, guys. It is nothing compared to the valuation on realignment. It would not stop Wisconsin the president and chancellor of Wisconsin would not vote against Miami because of that poaching deal. They wouldn't. It's not going to make a major difference. It isn't.
Yeah, that's more about making sure the Big Ten contract is valid generally, and that was just like an easy example to do.
Right. They're trying to get a precedent set. All right, moving on. We're going to go to option number 3. Sunshine supremacy. The Big Ten goes to 20. They take Miami and Florida State.
Again, this is like the first one light, right? Like if football's priority for you, and TV on average TV ratings, over a longer period of time, this is the one you go with in terms of a market as well as entry into a state in 2 different ways, as well as the school that over the last decade, in case of FSU, has at least been the highest rated more often than not. But though they and Clemson, I think, have jockeyed back and forth with that number 1 spot with Clemson's run in the playoffs and titles.
Right. And absolutely in this scenario, Clemson would be taken by the SEC. The SEC would fill out with North Carolina, Virginia, +1. We won't get into which +1 that is, but this is Big Ten's going to 20. Notre Dame's still clinging to independence. They don't want to come along. Big Ten goes into Florida, gets the team in South Florida, gets the team in Northern Florida, basically dominates the Sunshine State. We know they've got the UF Gators, but the UF Gators are not on a good streak. We'll see if Billy Napier can turn it around this year and get some big wins. But
Did
yeah,
you
you
not
would
know
take
that DJ Lagway is Tim Tebow reborn?
I don't know. I've had to play against him in EA's college football. He is pretty. In EA college football, he's really good. He's really good, or at least the people who played against me with him are really good. But yeah, I mean, look, you're getting the two best teams in Florida. You know, I understand Florida State went 2-10 last year, but the year before that, you know,
We're 13
Miami,
now.
yeah, Miami. Again, they were a crazy loss away from being in the college football playoffs. They didn't have a defense last year, but their offense was outstanding. I still think it was the number one offense at the end of the season.
It was.
Yeah,
Number one
and
offense and the worst defense I've ever seen in my entire life at a Power 4 conference.
right. So, I mean, the Sunshine Supremacy, we're looking at Florida State, Miami. The Big Ten gets into Florida. The rest of the South, not so much. They stop at 20, at least until they can get Notre Dame on board.
I'm happy with this. Like I don't want to lose Florida State as at least a game, and it would be even better to keep them in conference. It's a better value for any conference to take these two together. I don't know where Florida State fans really lie on this. If the ESPN drama has mitigated and they just want to get to either of them, if there's a preference, I'm not sure what the straw poll for FSU fans at large would be, but this makes sense to me. And Florida State's almost certainly going to be in the AAU from the Big Ten academic prestige side within the next, 2 to 6 years.
Yeah, you get two big brands. You get a big TV market from Miami. You get into the state of Florida, which has got huge population growth. Everybody goes to Florida. It seems like lots of alumni down there, Big Ten alumni. This would make a lot of sense if these are your two best options. Again, you mentioned it. There's a rivalry right there. You're bringing in
Not
two
just a
schools.
rivalry, but on every list, at least at the worst, it's a top 10 rivalry, right?
It's a top 10 rivalry. I would agree with that. It's a top 10 rivalry. So you're picking that up. As a conference rivalry, again, you could build that into conference rivalry weekend at the end of the year. Make that the Friday night game every year. That would be pretty cool. Have that on rivalry weekend, kicking that off, followed by the game on Saturday at noon. The lockdown. This is an option where the Big Ten says we need to get as many states in as we can. So we're going to add a school from North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. So they take Duke, the private school from North Carolina, joins the Big Ten Academic Alliance. Miami, private school from Florida, joins the Big Ten Academic Alliance. They have private schools. They don't have to worry about North Carolina politics, don't have to worry about Florida politics. Then they pick up Georgia Tech and Clemson. Again, those are public schools, but I don't think they're really going to have to worry too much about politics in Georgia and South Carolina. Georgia dominates, the University of Georgia dominates the state of Georgia. Clemson, on the other hand, doesn't necessarily dominate South Carolina, but they dominate a good portion of North Carolina and Georgia and a portion of South Carolina, even parts of Tennessee. You see Clemson fans spring up in. So it's a little strange, but you would basically lock down 4 new states for the Big Ten. You get into the Southeast corridor by taking North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida.
Yeah, this is the least sexy one, right? But it helps your basketball a lot with Duke for sure. And we'll see. Duke could have a really good year with their football team. I don't think they're going to finish in the top 4 in the ACC, but they certainly have been consistent and made a transition from Mike Elko to Manny Diaz pretty well, at least in year 1. And you'd probably get Duke to pony up some cash to everybody too.
Yes, Duke would come in at 0 share. They would basically, Duke would SMU their way into the Big Ten Conference in this scenario.
I mean, it would be worth it just to see Duke fans have to know that they had to take no money to get in somewhere versus the other schools there, it would be ego shattering.
Yes. And again, this is greasing the skids. Michigan and Wisconsin, Washington, they would get Georgia Tech and Duke. They'd be thrilled to have Duke in the Big Ten Academic Alliance. The football people, Ohio State and Penn State, would love to have Miami and Clemson. This is kind of a 50-50. It's a give and a take. But this would get the Big Ten the most territory in the Southeast, as it were. They would pick up the state of North Carolina. They'd plant a flag in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. 4 states, huge areas, huge population growth. This is a more forward-thinking one for the Big Ten. I don't know if this one's plausible, but I'm going to put it out there.
It is wild. I don't know if it's just the, one report says something and everybody goes on to it, but it all could just be figments in everybody's minds. But, we go from not having Clemson in any scenario to having Clemson in 3 scenarios from, over the course of a month. And I don't know if it's all fan fiction or some based in reality or a lot based in reality.
It is based in reality. Clemson is liked. They're a likable university. They're a likable team. So, they've made inroads towards the Big Ten. They've made inroads toward the SEC. Clemson is going out of their way to be nice to people, and people are liking that. People are digging nice Clemson. So
yeah, and to be clear, I'm not saying that they don't belong in the Big Ten or anything like that. I'm just talking about the narrative and things we've talked about on this or listened to on other shows for a while. It hasn't been so much about Clemson to the Big Ten. It's been much more about the possibility of, will they be the second team in South Carolina in the SEC? I think it would be a great move for Clemson to be in the Big Ten, both for the Big Ten and for Clemson.
Yeah, I think it's a better option than being in the SEC for Clemson. I think because of University of South Carolina, they're always going to play second fiddle to them in the SEC. Just, like it or not, I think that's just the way it would be. Even if Clemson is this far superior football program. All right, last one.
Oh, there's one more.
Yeah, one more. We have 5 options here.
Holy hell!
5 options. Now this one might be the most Yes, this might be the most far-fetched, or it might be the most realistic, depending on who you ask. But the Revenge of the Nerds Conference. Academics wins out. The Big Ten becomes a super conference. 24 teams. They add the University of Miami, Georgia Tech, Notre Dame. Private schools, Stanford and Duke, both leave the Ivy Public League Library, join the Big Ten Academic Alliance, +1. And I put +1 here because there's a lot of different names we can throw out here. We could throw out Cal, Arizona State, Utah, Colorado. It's going to be a team out west. You've got to figure they're going to do some kind of regional divisions. So you're going to need one more team out west to fill this out. So take your pick, either Cal, Colorado, Utah, or Arizona State. One of those schools is going to come along here. Every one of these schools would be AAU. So you're going to go to 23 out of 24 AAU members. At that point, Nebraska might start getting some flop sweat, especially if Matt Rule has not done what he is supposed to be doing. Because, look, you got 23 out of 24. Adding Stanford and Duke to the Big Ten Academic Alliance, Big Ten Cancer Research Consortium. You are adding 4 private schools here. That could be helpful, like we did with labor relations by saying, hey, they're private schools here, so you got to, you'd have 5 private schools, 6 private schools. 6 private schools. So 25% of your conference would be private schools.
Yeah, it would seem, I just have a hard time if you go to this scenario, which I don't think is hard to imagine, that it's not Cal with Stanford, like that they wouldn't just bring them together for that history. And I feel like that's a reason why Cal is really trying to get their act together with sports, and there's been a lot of changes there. If it wasn't Cal, like my guess you'd be Arizona State, because it would then go to what's the top 10 markets, and I believe Phoenix is in the top 5, the metro area. So the potential from a TV ratings blends, not like any disparaging of Utah or Colorado. I think depending upon how long down the road this was, there'll be a question about whether Colorado is a permanent thing or a Dion thing. I have no idea what that press conference is about tomorrow. Is it about Dion or about his team? I would think it would be Arizona State, but like it's hard to imagine, Notre Dame, Stanford coming over, and Cal isn't their partner right across the way, and you just reconstituting 6 of the Northern Pac-12 conference teams now in the Big Ten. But Arizona State would be my second most likely, maybe first most likely based off of the market, and then Cal is out there in the wilderness.
I think when it comes to the +1, I think a lot of that's going to go to Notre Dame. Notre Dame is going to be paying the heaviest freight on this. They're going to bring the most value, obviously. They're going to be carrying some of the freight. You're probably going to have a good portion of these schools are going to have to take a reduced payout. Notre Dame won't. Miami probably won't. Georgia Tech, Stanford, Duke, and whoever +1 is going to have to take a reduced payout to get the other schools to agree. This is the first of the super conferences, 24 teams. You would have a crazy number of, thank you. You would have a crazy number of teams within your conference. Do you go to, this would also resolve, and I mentioned it earlier, regional play, reduced travel. You would have a West Coast division. You could have a Central division. You could have a Rust Belt division. You could have a Southeast division this way. And listen, all of them are AAU members. You fold in Stanford and Duke. If Stanford and Duke both left the Ivy Public League system to be the BTAA, it would make the BTAA the best in terms of research, hands down. It would surpass what the Ivy Public League is right now. That is something those schools are going to have to make a decision on.
Right.
Duke, I think from the rumors we've heard about Duke is already willing to do it. Stanford, from what we've heard about Stanford, they haven't been so keen as to leave yet. But I would think if the ACC is collapsing, Notre Dame, Duke, Stanford, at that point, I think they may look for a life raft. They may. And then the +1, again, we can argue about the +1 all we want. That could be Cal, that could be Utah, Colorado, Arizona State. I tend to lean with you. I do think it would be Cal, simply because I think Notre Dame would want Cal. They fought for Notre Dame, and Notre Dame fought for Cal and Stanford to get into the ACC. University of Miami added for him as well, voted for him as well. Georgia Tech voted for him as well. So you would have to think there'd be support there. Arizona's a bigger ad.
Moen. I was going to say, what do you think of that one?
Arizona's a bigger ad than Arizona State. Let's get real, people. Arizona is not the same university as Arizona State. Arizona State is AAU. This clearly says Revenge of the Nerds. It's going to take into account AAU status. Arizona is not yet there. And I think, honestly, it'd be a better fit for Arizona in the Big 12. I think those schools splitting off into different conferences would actually benefit both of those schools. I think it would benefit Arizona State, and I think it would benefit Arizona. But we'll see. This is just, again, we're putting out 5 options here. We can argue and debate these options all we want, but these are the 5 options I've put together that I believe the next big realignment move is going to be one of these 5 options. And some of them might not seem likely, but It didn't seem likely a few years ago that Oregon, Washington, and USC and UCLA would be in the Big Ten.
Mo, and there's a couple of comments in the bottom coming over from Greg you might want to check out. I don't think you're going to have to come up with a sixth scenario, but just look at them.
Is Arizona AAU?
I have no idea, so I won't comment.
I thought Arizona State was the only one, but I could be wrong. Let me see here. Let me pull up some of the stuff from Greg's stream. Greg reported that Virginia Tech thinks Stanford lost its shot to the Big. They did piss off a lot of people in the Big Ten. I'll confirm that. And that Virginia Tech is hoping they will be the Cal to UVA. Again, that's assuming UVA goes to the Big Ten, which I don't believe. I just don't believe that. I think UVA is following wherever UNC goes.
Yes, Mona, University of Arizona is AAU.
Okay, I apologize to the Wildcat fans, but I think Arizona State would still probably get the nod. Virginia. Congratulations to Virginia Tech. I would hope the best for them, but I don't see that being the case. I see UVA is going to follow UNC. And I think their argument's going to be, let's keep the oldest rivalry in the South. And I think both of them are going to go to the SEC. In fact, in all these scenarios, UNC and UVA are off to the SEC. And I just put it that way because it's trending that way. We had the report over the weekend. I don't believe in handshake agreements, but it's pretty clear when you look at everybody that they're positioning at the University of Virginia and the University of North Carolina and their board of visitors, board of governors, moving Gusowich out, Bubba Cunningham taking a 2-year extension and training his replacement. It's pretty obvious that those two schools prefer the SEC. The academics at UNC and UVA, they hate it. I'm sure they hate it. They would much rather be in the Big Ten. Unfortunately, they're not. They don't have the steering wheel at this point. They're not controlling the wheel. So,
I mean, regardless, it would be a very good time if Virginia Tech does have those higher aspirations, and you never know how things could tumble, to have Brent Pry have a good season with Virginia Tech and to pull those TV ratings up at the same time, because they were not good last year. And I thought the floor for Virginia Tech on that side of the equation, and it's not just about TV ratings, but it was lower than I would have expected. I think of Virginia Tech as a really big premier football brand that has a high floor, so to speak, and it was pretty low in the ratings last year.
Yeah, Virginia Tech's got good academics too. It's a good academic institution. I don't think they are AAU. They're not, but they could be. They do a lot of research. They do a ton of research over at Virginia Tech. The only problem with Virginia Tech into the Big Ten is, one, I don't think UVA is coming, and if UVA came, I don't think they would take two schools in Virginia. They've already got Maryland. They're not going to take a second school in Virginia. You're just not going to take that many schools in that close range for expansion. At least I don't think so.
Virginia Tech is not AAU currently.
Virginia Tech money perch hoping for Big Ten. Sure, I think a lot of people are hoping for Big Ten or SEC.
I was hoping for Mega Millions too.
Well, I mean, I think that's what every team needs to hope for. I mean, listen,
sure.
Duke is hoping for Big Ten. Duke is hoping for Big Ten. North Carolina State's probably hoping for SEC. Doesn't necessarily mean it would happen.
Yeah, Virginia Tech, I'm sure North Carolina State, I'm sure, is hoping that internal state politics will, to flash back a year, turn them into a backpack.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Could happen. I think I don't disagree with them. I think Virginia Tech money perch probably is hoping, but I think a lot of money perches are hoping. David Sabanosh is here. He says, "Yo, Moen and Rock, good to see you." Oh, I better get this poll started before I forget. All right, guys, we're going to start a poll. We're going to put, I think I can do 5 options. let's see. Option 1, we're going to do the $1 billion quartet. Option 2, we're going to do the brains and brawn. Option 3, we're going to do sunshine. Well, let me see if I can add an option here. I may only be able to add 4 options. So let's do... We're going to pass on sunshine supremacy because I think that's probably a little too close to some of the others. So we're only going to be able to do 4.
I've ever seen that I'm not stressed out about, Moen.
Yeah, I'm going to take sunshine supremacy, guys. I'm going to take that out of the poll. I think there's other ways in here that work close to it. So, and I want to get Revenge of the Nerds up there as a choice. So, simply because it's Revenge of the Nerds. I'll have to get my lambda cardigan out next time. All right, come on. Let me just ask a question. All right, guys, that poll is live. Go ahead and vote for it. Just again, here are your options. The $1 billion quartet, Notre Dame, Miami, Florida State, Clemson. Brains and brawn, Miami and Georgia Tech. The lockdown, Duke, Miami, Georgia Tech, and Clemson. And the Revenge of the Nerds, University of Miami, Georgia Tech, Stanford, Notre Dame, Duke, +1. What would be your pick, Rock? What do you think is the best option?
For me, the best option is the first option because you're fortifying your... The whole reason why you're doing this realignment isn't necessarily because you were looking for another AAU school, right? Though, I think one thing people aren't taking into account is that, things change when the world changes, right? And if institutes of higher learning are being put into challenging positions with grants disappearing from the federal government, as an example, the money that does come in for research dwarfs, in many cases, the media value dollars you're getting from partners like Fox. And if you're worried about that, and bringing in premier academic institutions is going to make it easier for third-party private research from pharmaceutical companies to come in and be distributed, that could change the factor. So to me, it's, if you're leaning towards establishing yourself as potentially the premier football brand, you go with the first one. But if you're worried about and you want to put the most emphasis on the Big Ten Academic Alliance, then you should just go for it all the way. Like, that would be my point. I would go for one direction or the other all the way, right? Go for the biggest brands you can in football and really completely compete. Or if you're valuing people who are good or at least vested in college sports, football among them, and can bring in academic value on the research side that could potentially dwarf the money you're talking about from your Fox and playoff deal, then you go to your Revenge of the Nerds. To me, those are the two most logical and the most complicated, possibly.
I 100% agree with you, Rock. I like this. The $1 billion quartet gets Notre Dame. And the reason I like both of these is it adds Notre Dame. I think you have to have Notre Dame to add the most total value available from a media standpoint. I'm not saying Stanford's not a brand. Stanford has a brand. Duke, definitely. Basketball definitely has a brand. Georgia Tech, not so much. Georgia Tech does not have a huge brand. They're not a huge school, but they are in Atlanta. Big pocket of Big Ten alumni there. +1. We can say it's either Cal, Colorado, Utah, or ASU, or Arizona. We'll add Arizona into that. It's just +1 more on the West Coast. I tend to agree with you. I think it would be Cal at that point, because I think Notre Dame would insist it be Cal. And that would actually, you'd have 6 of the original 8 Pacific Coast Conference members in the Big Ten at that point.
Right.
And I think that makes, if you're going to a super conference, if you're going to 24, it makes sense to do it regionally. Again, yeah, you're not going to play every team in your conference every year. It's going to be some kind of, 5 here, 2 there, 2 there, some kind of system to come up with that. But yeah, I think those two are the best options. The option that might get picked, I don't think that's either of the options that gets picked.
You don't?
I think Notre Dame would not accept the $1 billion quartet. I think Notre Dame has issues with Florida State. It's been mentioned before.
Right.
I don't know that Notre Dame would take this. Notre Dame may want more of the nerds.
Well, would there be a blended version, which is the $1 billion quartet plus 2 nerds?
That could be. At that point,
you get Stanford and Cal in there, or you get Stanford and Georgia Tech or something.
If you're taking Stanford, you're taking Duke. I just feel like if you can get Stanford to come off the Ivy League plus library system, you can get Duke to come off of it, and it's just going to make, for Washington, for Michigan, for Wisconsin, for all the huge UCLA is massive in research too. For all those huge research things, getting Stanford and Duke to join the Big Ten Academic Alliance they would love that. So I think if the two nerds would probably be Stanford and Duke. At that point, Cal's going to be kind of left out in the cold. But I think in reality, if Notre Dame could have their way, they would probably do Stanford, Cal, and Duke instead of Florida State. I know Notre Dame has some kind of issue with Florida State, or they have in the past. Now, the person who mentioned it earlier mentioned Stanford. Stanford does have an issue with the Big Ten. And the Big Ten has an issue with Stanford. And I've kind of hinted to it before, but there was a time when Stanford could have been in the Big Ten, and they kind of played footsie, and they did something that was I don't know how you want to put it, just impolite. Something that is not couture with the Big Ten. They didn't appreciate what they did. And Stanford and Cal ended up joining the ACC with Notre Dame. And Notre Dame sponsored Stanford and Cal into the ACC. Remember that. Jack Swarbrick was the one who pushed for Stanford and Cal to join the ACC. Now, every one of these teams, Miami, Georgia Tech, and Duke, voted for them to join the ACC. So it could be very possible that they would have the support of those schools in joining the Big Ten, but I don't think any of these schools outside of Notre Dame is going to have any say in regards to that. Notre Dame would be consulted, but any of the new ads, they would not be consulted, I don't believe.
Yeah, it's super interesting, as clearly evidenced by the gazillion comments in chat, which is off the chart.
Yeah, just right now I'm letting you know, $1 billion quartet's winning at 42. Brains and Brawn at 21. The Lockdown is at 7%. Revenge of the Nerds is at 30%. We may have to do a runoff here. We may do a runoff. I'm going to leave that poll open a little while longer. If you're watching us on X, by the way, and you want to vote in that poll, jump on over to YouTube. And as long as you're signed into YouTube, you can vote in that poll too. Have your feelings heard. Roman Maroney says, okay, I'm done lurking. Miami needs to play the Stephen Ross card.
Yeah, that's a good point. I forgot to mention that. That's a huge, I mean, don't diminish. It's not going to be the only influence, but it's one of the biggest donors to Michigan, who also happens to own the Dolphins and Hard Rock Stadium.
Very true. He could make that push, but is Michigan going to take their academic snobbery and accept Miami, who is what they would consider new money in the AAU?
I don't know. I'll have to put a spy on the other sidelines this season and find out.
Artgrass says, I like this option. Miami, Florida State, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, and get rid of Michigan. As much as I hate Michigan, I would not want them out of the Big Ten Conference.
But is Michigan the Utah of the Big Ten? Like Utah to the Big 12, which I know they seem to get all the grief. Is that like, or more, forget about Ohio State, Michigan. Is that a more recent development?
No, listen, because Michigan does want to be in the Big Ten.
Yes.
Utah does not want to be in the Big 12.
Utah seems to be the school of scorn in the Big 12.
Utah is scorned because they don't want to adapt to the Big 12, and they don't want to be in the Big 12, and they're not above telling you about it every opportunity they get. So, I mean, I can't blame the hate on Utah. Michigan does want to be in the Big Ten. Listen, they're arrogant. But from a point, you get beyond football rivalry, Michigan's a big part of the Big Ten. They are. And if you want to get right down to it, the reason Notre Dame isn't in the Big Ten is because of Michigan. Pit Sniper Husker says, I would not oppose adding Cal and Stanford just to help our new Western members. Yeah, if you're going to 24, it makes sense to have 6 members out West, do some kind of divisions or pods, and you can do a scheduling thing.
Hey, Pit Snipe, do you think Matt Rule's on the hot seat there or no?
Jamie Bengals Girl's here. Hi, guys. Good to see you, Jamie. Haven't seen you in a while. She's, of course, an Arkansas Razorback fan.
Another school with a possible coach on the hot seat, I would think, but we'll see.
I would have to believe so. But I mean, it's tough in those schools. That's a tough job to take. Arkansas, Mississippi State, those kind of schools, because, that's just a tough job.
I still have Arkansas in like my echelon from like being younger when they were so dominant in their conferences. So I still have that. Maybe they can pull it back and get back up on to the top half of the SEC, top quarter on a good year.
Yeah, I still remember Darren McFadden, Peyton Hillis, and what was the third one named? I want to say Felix something. Shit, I can't think of the kid's name. He ended up playing for the Dallas Cowboys, but I can't think of his name, the third running back. But I think Houston Nutt was the coach then. That was a hellacious team. Felix Jones, thank you. Felix Jones. Yeah, imagine having that 3-headed monster. Peyton Hillis had 1 season in the NFL, but it was a hell of a season. Rod Nix is in the house. He says, what's up, Moen and Rock?
What's up, Rod?
D5 Terp says, Virginia Tech isn't getting in a Power 2. UVA is definitely following UNC and probably Clemson. FSU is still a wild card, in my opinion.
Hey, Jamie has good sources in the SEC, and she's not a big believer in UVA going to the SEC. So I think you got to keep that out as I wouldn't necessarily lock it all the way in.
I hear you, Jamie. You have to look at this. UVA is just starting to do what UNC did 3 years ago. The SEC has always only taken 2 schools at once. I think UNC and Clemson are most likely. I think the problem with Clemson, Jamie, Georgia, Florida, and South Carolina. I think those 3 schools are going to put up major resistance to adding Clemson, especially the University of South Carolina. So, yeah, I think it's North Carolina, Virginia. Again, my reasoning is you keep the oldest rivalry in the South, and you add Virginia and North Carolina to the SEC footprint. I think most people still consider Virginia and North Carolina southern states. Jazzinho says, I was pulling for Cal and Stanford for a long time. Then I learned about Stanford's library wanting to stay in the Ivy. Can't say I'm mad now. I'm still pulling for Cal, though. Cal's not getting in without significant help. Any thoughts on how NCAA will come down on the whole Connor Stallions affair? It'd be a slap on the wrist. They'll lose some scholarships. They won't get a bowl ban. They won't have any wins stripped.
I thought that was what it was going to be, but then I only questioned it only because Tony Petitti specifically went after NCAA not doing anything further to Michigan, which made me think he's worried that they're going to do something further to Michigan that isn't just a slap on the wrist.
Mick Stevens says TCU to the Big Ten. Mick, I can't see it. I can't see it. We've crunched the numbers. It's just such a small school. And I get it. It's in a huge market. It would get the Big Ten into Texas, but I think the Big Ten is probably not looking to enter what I would consider the Deep South. I don't think they would enter Texas, Alabama, Mississippi. The coastal regions like Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, I think are much more likely. Michael Smith says Stanford will decommission their varsity programs and the 50-plus Olympian medalists they sent Team USA last year before they ever enter an agreement that causes them to share the patents. Fair enough. They may have to do that. I'm going to end this poll here. We're going to do a runoff, guys. We're going to do a runoff. Let's see, because we had 40% for $1 Billion Quartet, 31% for Revenge of the Nerds, 19% for Brain and Bronze, and 8% for the Lockdown. So let's just do a runoff here. Runoff. Almost put rub off. That would have been a completely different poll.
Well,
billion.
While you're setting that up, if you're watching over on X, consider coming over to the channel, CFB Mafia, on YouTube. Subscribe, like the channel, get into the vote right now. It would be really helpful for the channel if you're enjoying the show and the other shows that the Mafia crew does throughout the week.
Absolutely. And while we're at it, if you're watching over on X, go ahead and follow at CFB Express. That is a Twitter account from one of our sister channels. We'll call it sister channels because why not? We'll stab them in the back someday, the way the Big Ten stabbed their sister conference in the back. CFB Express. Go ahead and follow them on Twitter, and you can follow them on YouTube. It's the same address at CFBXPRESS. Please give them a follow and a like. And
we'll have Wild Ute and Bomber on our show on Thursday night because we're going to do a Big 12 roundtable.
There you go.
As well as Coos and a couple other people. And Moen will be coming on soon for a Big 10 rivalry.
Yes, Moen will be there for a Big 10 one, and Moen will show up sober. Maybe.
No.
we'll do a poll on that. All right, guys, that runoff poll is right there right now. It's Nerds or $1 Billion Quartet. Who do you got? Does the Big 10 go to 24, or do they stick at 22 with the 4 most valuable brands available? Let's see. Nerds right now are winning. If you want marketing. If you want that $1 Billion Quartet, you guys got to get over here and vote. If you're on X, there's 237 of you on X, man. If you really want $1 Billion Quartet to win, you better get on over here to YouTube. I'm going to let that poll run till the end of the show. We got about 12 more minutes left here. We're going to get to some comments. Duke is going to do a Memphis. They're going to do more than a Memphis because Memphis didn't have as much to offer as Duke does. Duke has way more money than Memphis, and Duke joining the Big Ten Academic Alliance would certainly boost the research of everybody in the conference. So I wouldn't even call it an SMU. I think a Duke would just be a Duke. I think a Duke would be probably the most of any school so far that's paid to get into the Power 2.
Yeah, and I have a hard time imagining we're going to hear about a formal Duke offer that hasn't been accepted.
Moen, what did Stanford do? What did they do? They were for it before they were against it. I'll leave it at that. They agreed to something and then walked it back. And that upset quite a few people. If Notre Dame had to choose between Duke or Stanford, who did they pick? Stanford. I don't think there's any argument there.
Yeah, the rivalry is there. The history.
Yeah. If the Big Ten had to choose between Duke or Stanford, they'd probably take Duke. I hope I pronounced this right. Janus? Mick Stevens, I would take TCU, provided it is with ASU.
That would be out of left field. That's like put some money on that in Vegas. Good parlay.
Go Black 45 says, remember, Jamie, when Duke does it, they say it's a strategic move. When SMU and Memphis do it, it's a desperate move. Yeah, it's funny how much money marketing can change the euphemism you use for something, huh?
Absolutely.
A lot of these schools are praying for Notre Dame to join the Big to get in, but my Notre Dame Fred said Notre Dame still wants to keep their football indie only and might look at the Big East and scheduling agreement. Okay, that's going to be a rough scheduling agreement for Notre Dame, but if they think they can pull it off and still get that same amount of money from NBC, more power to them.
I think they can pull it off if the SEC and Big Ten do not do a scheduling agreement. If they do one and all these teams come out of the ACC, then I think it's very difficult, not for them to schedule a full season, but to schedule a strength of record kind of thing that's going to keep them in the running for the ranking they would need to make whatever form the playoff takes from 12 to 16.
MBM says Notre Dame will for sure dictate their partner if they join. They can probably actually dictate 2 or 3 partners. That's how much power Notre Dame has. CFB Rivalry says Omega Moo. Absolutely. If you've ever seen Poindexter dancing in that movie, that's exactly how I dance. Jamie says Revenge of the Nerds for me. Jamie says, if UNC and Clemson go in 26 or 27 to the SEC, the Big has to add Florida State, Miami, in my opinion. I agree. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that they would add them at that point. They would probably also add Georgia Tech and Duke at that point, too, because I think those would be needed to grease the skids a little bit. 49ers, Rockets, Ryder. Interesting combination. I believe this should be a 3-way swap. Send Missouri to the Big Ten, send Maryland to the ACC, and send the University of North Carolina to the SEC.
What did the ACC do to you?
Yeah, what did the Big Ten do? I mean, Maryland, we have the DC marketplace. I mean, I don't know. Those Missouri guys, they've been in the South too long for me. I'd like to stick with Maryland. Tony Lawson says Florida State, Miami is the only realistic choice. Boy, lots of comments flying in here, guys. I'm trying to get to as many as I can. By the way, poll is currently 45 to 55 with 44 votes in. Nerds are winning 55 to 45. The Big Ten, according to the viewers, the majority of you think the Big Ten is going to 24. They're coming to 6 teams on the West Coast. We won't say who the 6th is, but we believe they're going to get there. No one has really said what the issue Notre Dame has with Florida State, maybe because Florida State has beat them more in football. I put it up there on Twitter. You can follow my Twitter, Daniel Gorby, at Moen After Dark. I showed the real reason that Notre Dame would not join the Big Ten, which is unfettered dominance of Notre Dame by Ohio State. 7 straight wins dating back to 1995, including a national championship. So, Florida State, Notre Dame's issue with Florida State, that's a great question. You would have to ask Jack Swarbrick. I don't know. Let's put this one up for a while, the $1 billion quartet. I think I've given enough promotional time to the nerds.
Somehow I don't believe it's just that airport. Like, it can't just be the airport.
Yeah.
Which is the only thing I ever heard is the reason.
And the only person I've ever heard complain about it was Jack Swarbrick, but he wouldn't elaborate in Jack Swarbrick fashion. You know, he would just make an offhanded, passive-aggressive comment, and that was that. So, have to find out from Jack Swarbrick.
Airport's brilliant compared to State College Airport.
Well, of course. I mean, but I think his issue was Notre Dame had to fly into Atlanta and then take a bus to Tallahassee. But again, Daniel, I don't know. Somebody could have said the wrong thing to him. Yeah.
I just want to carve that up real quick. Miami flies to Tallahassee all the freaking time. And they have to carry football stuff. Right? Or maybe they're sending the trucks ahead, but everybody sends trucks ahead for games. So I don't understand why Notre Dame, who's flying charters, has to stop in Atlanta to get to Tallahassee if Miami and other schools fly their football teams into Tallahassee. I didn't think of it at the time, but it seems a little bit weird. Once again, I'm sitting here having to defend Florida State.
And we're going to bookmark that, people. We're going to clip that as much as we can. BY Shonsky says Notre Dame can play LSU, Georgia, Texas A&M. You're not going to push Notre Dame into a conference. Go ahead, play them. Go for it, Notre Dame. The problem is Notre Dame's going to have to park the rest of their sports somewhere, Shonsky. And they don't like travel. They've already made that very clear. If you put them in a 24-team conference where it's regional, they're going to stay regional. They'll get to continue their relationships with Stanford, USC, Clemson, if you had Clemson in that situation. But most importantly, USC and Stanford. But listen, Notre Dame's going to have to join a conference at some point. Will they do it in 2031 or 2036? I think that's a question. All my defense says Florida State is going to get where they need to go. Florida State will not be left behind. Okay. I like that enthusiasm. I like it. Jansen Roberts says a lot of ifs and buts going on. Too bad they aren't candy and butts. Candy and nuts. It would end world hunger. Jack Swarbrick, by the way, loves nuts.
So does South Park.
Michigan's only scorned by their rivals. Again, yeah. But as a university, I want Michigan in there. Ohio State is arrogant too. That's true, CFB rivalries, but is it really arrogance when you back it up?
Well, I think there's, from afar, I would say Ohio State is arrogant and Michigan is more elitist. They're different forms of the same thing.
That's true.
One's based on football performance, and the other one's just more dukish.
And that's a lot of the hate that the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry has. That, it's a lot of Michigan looking down their nose at Ohio State, which is fair. I'll admit it is fair. We like to party a little more. So far, 53-47. If you're going to vote, you got to get in here, guys. We got 3 minutes left in the show. I'm trying to get through comments. It is 53-47 for the $1 billion quartet. Nerds have slipped into number 2. Let's see what happens.
And everyone who's on Twitter, if you come over and vote in the last 3 minutes, I have assurances from the White House that an executive order will come out in favor of whichever decision we make as a team.
Jamie says what you said about Florida State is true about Florida State, Mom, but they won't complain as much about Clemson. It's just not as great of a recruiting ground as FSU is. Yeah, but if you get Clemson, you get into Georgia. You take Miami, you get into South Florida. I think South Florida is probably a more rich talent area than, which I'm not saying Tallahassee doesn't get in there, but I think Miami gets in there. Obviously, they're a lot closer. No offense, but I don't trust you on this one. Nothing this year or next year or the year after changes. We'll be here. You can say I told you so, D5 Terps. Won't be the first time it's happened in my life. Won't be the last. Won't be the first time this week, and it's only Sunday. Big is not going into Texas, and they're fine with it. Florida is a priority. Yeah, I don't think they are going into Texas. I just don't see it. But that's just my opinion. MBM says Clemson got to get that hill run thing figured out. Dabo is going to eat it hard one day. Wheelchair ramp and just roll him on down.
That's kind of like OJ sliding down the stairs and getting ejected into the field in the Naked Gun.
Or OJ brutally murdering 2 people and getting away with it. Jansen Roberts, Clemson is 75 miles from Athens, Georgia. Yeah, it's close. Oh boy, I'm trying to get through I'm trying to get some comments from members here. Let's see. Sam 8911 SK, Stanford is out. They're not going to give up the Ivy research money. if Duke was willing to join the Big Ten Academic Alliance, I think that would go a long way in convincing Stanford too. It was Stanford that declined, not the other way around. That's absolutely correct. But only after they had agreed to something. 2025 growth rate, Florida number 2, North Carolina number 7. Yep, boomers love Florida. Do not underestimate boomers moving to Florida. Florida State dared to stand up to Notre Dame. That's true. That could be part of it too. Florida State was leading the cries not to allow Stanford and Cal in. If they don't like travel, why would Notre Dame go to the Big Ten then? If you're in a 2014 Big Ten Stormy Cyclone, you'd be in regional pods. You would most likely, if you're Notre Dame, stay in the Midwest. So you'd be traveling to Michigan, Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Ohio, lots of places you can get to by bus. Are you going to have an occasional game where you have to fly out to the West Coast? Sure, but they already do that. Anyway, for USC every other year or Stanford every other year. Notre Dame has a beginning quasi-scheduling agreement in football started with the SEC. Does Notre Dame want to stay independent? They have the option if they want it. Sure. I'm not disagreeing with that, but they've got to find a place to park their other sports.
They have that option for now, and they will always be able to schedule 12 games, but they may not be able to schedule 12 games that give them the level of competition they need to be in the rankings, whatever way the future playoff is. That's the issue. If the Big Ten and the SEC ever sort their crap out, go to 9 games and add each other as a scheduling agreement, it's going to be very hard and you take those schools out of the ACC and put them in the SEC or Big Ten, it's going to be very hard for Notre Dame to schedule a very competitive schedule that competes in the strength of schedule and strength of record reviews for the college football playoff.
Absolutely. We got 2 more members' comments I'm going to read, and then I'm going to end the poll and end the show right now. 62 votes. $1 Billion Quartet is winning 53-47. Get in there and get that vote. If you have not voted yet, now would be the time, because I've got 2 more comments and we're closing the poll. Timothy Green. I would like to see Notre Dame go to the SEC so that they could get their butts beat every year. Instead of being catered to and getting cupcake games anytime they want them, they have been catered to too much. Listen, Timothy, I think if they went to the Big Ten, they'd get their butts whipped every year too. Again, I posted it on Twitter, Timothy. I don't know if you follow me on Twitter, but 7 games of dominance over Notre Dame from Ohio State from 1995 onward. Notre Dame has not beat Ohio State since Franklin Delano Roosevelt was in his 3rd term as president. Keep that in mind. They are not looking forward. There's a reason that they schedule the way they schedule. Sam 8911 SK, Florida State is the co-flagship of Florida, the 3rd largest state, best talent, and a rich state. I will not disagree with you on talent. I think the best talent comes out of South Florida. God bless Jeremiah Smith and everything he's done for Ohio State. I would love for Ohio State to be able to go in there and recruit South Florida much easier than they already have it. So I am all for that. I do not disagree with that. All right, let's take this off here. Let's end this poll, and we're going to see what people want. What did the people pick?
I think they went with the nerds. I'm not looking at the poll. I'm just guessing.
Okay. They went with the $1 Billion Quartet.
A bunch of greedy mofos.
54% to 45% with a total of 66 votes. That's damn close.
It is.
That is damn close. So there you have it, guys. It's one of these 2, the $1 Billion Quartet. Let me get that comment off the screen. Or it's Revenge of the Nerds. Jason Spangler abstained. Thank you, Jason. That helped solve a lot of stuff. We'll include Jason's abstention in there to make the vote even closer. Thank you, Jason. Much appreciated, sir. But those are the 5 options we have for the Big Ten as far as expansion. Put that together tonight. I want to appreciate everybody who contributed tonight. Ryan Willie, Doc Gibbs for your super chats. They are most appreciated. We have 264 people who viewed us on X. I will hope you guys come over to YouTube at the CFB Mafia. Make sure you like, subscribe, leave a comment. If you're watching this on demand, I know a lot of people watch us on demand Monday mornings at work, spending that first hour and 20 minutes goofing off. Leave a comment. Let us know who you like and give us a reason why, or give us an option that we don't have up here. I would love to see your options that you don't have here. Just leave it in the comments section. All right, Rock, we went a little over time, but here's our last call. There you go.
Well, no more media days, and a lot of schools' camps start opening this week, so it will be interesting to see what happens on the field. We start to get some early practice reports, so I'm looking forward to that. I'm tired of hearing commissioners talk. I'm tired of hearing people who are supposed to be great public speakers at podiums not know how to use soft power to convince people over to their side, and arrogance coming from 2 of the conferences and being in oblivion in another one in the ACC. So looking forward to hearing what happens across the board. How about you, Moen?
For me, I'm glad media days are over, getting closer to football. I still would like to see, and I brought this up on Friday, I'd still like to see the schedule on college football move up. I can't stand preseason NFL football. It's the worst. Watching one drive of football where they're still not playing full speed just doesn't do it for me. Let's get college football in the mid-August. Let's get week 1, mid-August. Then we don't have to worry about scheduling college football playoff games against NFL games. And everybody is happy. And we don't have to worry about
one.
Yeah, well, we don't have to worry about ratings versus the NFL anymore. And ESPN can make all kinds of money. And at that point, we can go to 16-team playoff and everybody can make more money. And everybody agrees. And there's peace on earth. There's goodwill towards men. Cats and dogs living together. Mass hysteria.
There you go.
For myself, for Rock and Rant, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. We will catch you guys next Sunday. Until then, please have a good week. Stay safe. Enjoy yourselves. And as always, stay tuned.